Welcome to the Unraveling Shaltazar podcast. Welcome, Jeffrey, to the latest episode of Unraveling Shaltazar. How are you today?
I'm well, Mark. I'm well and excited to unravel more of the Shaltazar wisdom. And I guess I want to start out by saying I couldn't have a partner that's better than you. I love our process of unraveling and dissecting and taking this Shaltazar wisdom and not only allowing us to gain from it, but hopefully our conversations inspire others as well. And I know certainly on Insight Timer, people are listening to us, and we are extremely grateful for the people that take time to listen to our conversations.
Yeah, same. I'm very excited that so many people have been tuning in and find our conversations interesting. And I mean, our initial connection to all of this were the messages of Shaltazar, and as we do these, I come to a deeper understanding of the wisdom contained in them also. So it's been a therapeutic and positive experience for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's personally my recommendation to people is that experiencing the wisdom is more important than just listening to the wisdom. And I know I've had several people that get that aha moment, and they realize, and I think that's the case with everything. I personally think that maybe that might be part of the problem we have with education, is that there's too much book learning. And I think one of the lines in a recent Shaltazar message called Reinventing You says that books can give you knowledge, but life can give you wisdom. And so I think we're right into the wisdom by having these conversations, so we can integrate this wisdom. I
agree totally. So let's jump in. This is a special bonus edition because it's a 2-for-1. We're going to talk about two messages in one episode that are both very deeply intertwined and connected. The first one is called Finding Your Personal Power, which is a live channeling, and I don't know if you remember the date, but it seems like it may have been a bit older than the other one, which is called Connecting to Your Personal Power Center, which was from 2017. I always find this interesting when there's two messages that have a connection, because there's a lot of crossover, but some new ideas in each one. So I guess the overriding idea in both of them is this idea of who really are we, and what is our personal power. So I guess the question that I wanted to kind of explore here is what is personal power? What is that thing that we're calling personal power? And then the messages talk about or give advice for or suggest that we should try to align with that personal power. How do we do that? So those are kind of the two areas I thought we could talk about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fascinating. The interesting part, and the live channeling was my favorite of those two, but I'm rather critical of things like the sound and my voice and all of that. I have to say that as I began channeling, it took a while for me to be comfortable just listening to my voice. But my advice to listeners is, and I guess the young people don't have nearly the trouble that us old guys do, because with social media they're very used to listening to themselves. But I think both of us growing up, we really didn't get a chance to listen to ourselves. Other people had to listen to us, but when you listen to yourself, it's like, whoa, is that the way I sound? But the live channeling I thought was very interesting, because they really, at the end of that one, or the last, I guess even 2/3, they talk about that whole concept of power, and I couldn't help but think as I was re-listening to it, what is that power? I know the power they're talking about, but there's really a diversity of what is that power. And I remember David Hawkins, the late David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins wrote a book called Power versus Force. And I'm thinking, is power the right word? Is it force? What is that power? Now, I know in this message what Shaltazar was trying to get across is the power they're talking about is that flow. It's like where everything is just easy. When whatever it is you do, there doesn't seem to be a struggle. And I sense that that's the divine power. I really believe that when the source creates, it's like effortless. It's like really, really effortless. And in the Shaltazar teachings, they talk about manifestation a lot, and they say that when your doing is as easy and comfortable and light as fluffy as you're dreaming and imagining, then you can really get into a flow doing. And so I think that's sort of the power they're talking about. I think the biggest challenge as human beings we have is that sometimes we tap into a very unauthentic power, a power of more of a force, I guess. And I can't remember David Hawkins' book because he was very prolific and he used lots of words and sometimes he was way over my head. But I think the essence of what he was saying is that force is more of a in-your-face sort of Napoleonic Genghis Khan kind of, don't want to talk about my politics, but maybe Donald Trump. And the power is more of that genuine connection to your divinity, if that makes any sense. So I guess power, another thing that I was thinking of, is power is really what creates energy. And the thought that came is I look at solar power and I look at wind power, and it seems to be so much smoother than coal-fired power or gasoline or oil-fired power. And if you look at how energy comes forth in the wind, it just seems so easy, so natural. It's sort of there's the wind, and we harness it with a windmill, and we wind up with power. And so I guess another one to look at is plug something in your socket and the light comes on, and that seems so effortless. Now, somewhere in behind there, someone has worked very hard to create that power, but that's the power that I think that Shaltazar is talking about, that effortlessness to be able to create energy to get things done, if that makes any sense to you.
It does. One of the things that occurred to me as you were talking is when you were describing force versus power is maybe push versus pull, where force is, it's requires effort to move the thing forward, and power is the ability to attract it to you or something like that, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
No, I hear you. There is a very, very fine distinction, and I think in a lot of cases we are not taught, and the essence, I think, of these messages is that if we can connect to our divinity, we have this endless power. It's sort of like solar power, right? If you can sort of imagine, God is a big sun, and God is sending out this heat and this energy all of the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's always available to you. And I think the essence of this message is tap into that free source of power, and your life will be easier. That's not what we're taught growing up. What we're taught is that energy requires a strong effort, right? I mean,
effort, right.
You and I, before we got on, we talked about athletics, which I wasn't very good at. But to be good at athletics, you really have to build muscles, you have to build muscle mass, you have to practice, you have to develop skills. I think athletics is very, very much an effort requiring skill. And I think what they're trying to tell us in this message is if you can tap into that endless power, it doesn't require so much effort and so much use of your own personal energy.
Right. Well, and an image that kind of came to me, this idea of this endless flow of energy coming from source. I got this picture in my mind of like a waterfall of light, right? And if we're in the on the planet of free will, so we have the choice to either perhaps step under that waterfall and into that waterfall of light, or to stand alongside of it, perhaps. And maybe that whole idea, I mean, because a lot of these in both of these messages, there was kind of this idea of getting into alignment with source power, and maybe that's what's meant. Maybe we have the choice to either step into that flow and be part of it, or to stand alongside it or step outside of it and be separate and be more temporal and less godlike, if that makes sense.
100%. The image comes to mind of Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, talking about the flow of the river and how the river will go around the rocks, the river will go over the rough parts. And I think the image she uses is, do you want to be going downstream with the current, or do you want to be fighting the current moving upstream? And I think that's what you're talking about, and that's what what Shaltazar is saying to us, is that this river power, this solar power, this wind power, this natural power is available to you if you tap into it. One of the interesting things that in that message is about where they talk about your personal power is encoded in your DNA, and everybody has their own personal power, and that's sort of like, what the heck does that mean? Power is power, but the sense I get, it's when you can connect to your power in an authentic way. I think that's where it really counts, and I think a lot of the people that are trying to be powerful are really connecting in an inauthentic way. What's an example? I think people like me that are very sensitive, that are very kind, that are very considerate, we could easily use our power as a people pleaser, and I've done that for a lot in my life, and I have to say, it's not very much fun. It's really not fun always trying to please people and try to get that validation. But what Shaltazar is saying is, if I can tap into my personal power, that encoded DNA, then my power used in the positive, with the kindness and the sensitivity, still has boundaries, still comes from a place of self-respect and self-love, but is exhibited in a way that's probably even more effective than the people pleaser, because the people pleaser use of my energy, which is inauthentic, eventually starts to show up as obligation and responsibility. And I know that happened with my parents, where I just kept doing and doing, and I got worn down because it felt like obligation and responsibility. Whereas when I'm doing it from a genuine kindness, a genuine respect and consideration for my parents or anyone else, then I have so much more to give. I guess another way of saying it is, if I give from my inauthentic power, I'm going to run out of steam. I'm going to run out of that power. I'm going to have to go to the gas station and fill up. And if I don't, then you will find that what I do for you, for example, starts to feel a little bit disingenuous. And it's sort of like, gee, he's doing for me, but he really seems to have a grump on. He seems to really be resenting what he's doing. Whereas when I tap into my authentic power, I can give and give and give because I know when to stop. And it's like, sorry, Mark, I can't do that for you today. I got to replenish my love tank.
Right, and so what you were just saying is that when you're doing things out of a sense of obligation, it's force, right? It's a forced energy, versus when you're doing it from a place of love, it's natural and it seems normal and it's easy and it doesn't require work. It just happens. Maybe.
Right. And in that first message, the shorter one, I forget the name of that one, but the image that's coming to mind is if I was solar powered, right? In other words, if I got my energy from the sun, when a big dark cloud rolls across the sun, I'm scrambling because where's my source of power? And I think that's what Shaltazar is saying, is if you can connect to the divine, you can connect to that endless power. You can really have a cloud-free day all of the time. But sometimes things will happen. New moons, full moons, the shift in energy that the source is doing to our planet. We will be cut off from that, and we have to be able to decide from a place of free choice how we're going to handle it. How are we going to go back into our shell? How are we going to go back and not be the people pleaser? How are we going to cancel those appointments and say, sorry, I can't do that today? And I think that's really what they're saying, is that when when that big cloud rolls across the sky and you're cut off from your solar power, you have to be, if you want to be able to live a more peaceful, contented, loving life, you have to be able to find ways to replenish that power, because the sun's not available. And I believe Shaltazar is saying, go within, do your meditation, do your yoga, do your quiet contemplation. Don't be in the midst of the family, say, I got to go for a walk in nature. You have to be able to find ways when we are, when that energy that source is giving us is minimized a bit. We have to be able to respond to that in a healthy and appropriate way.
Sure. In fact, it even mentions in the I have the transcript of the live channeling, and it talks about DNA. It says your DNA is your personal power, and it says that that difference between aligned power and the other power that we're talking about is one is learned and one is innate. And it says that you have heard from many sources that within you is a piece of God, and we are here to inform you that within that piece of God is your personal power. So that you said it's rather than trying to find that energy or that power from outside of us, it is Shaltazar does seem to be saying, look within, because it's already inside you. You don't have to look for it out here; it's already here.
Yeah, exactly. An example that just popped into my mind is, you're out in the wilderness and it's getting a bit cold, and you don't have any matches, and it's like, how am I going to light this fire to stay warm? And you're searching around, and you try a couple of stones, and you try a couple of twigs, and you're doing the best you can to find this warmth outside of yourself. Whereas the person that knows Reiki, that knows hands-on healing, simply curls up in a ball and does some hands-on healing and uses, the Reiki in your hands to warm your body. And I think that's sort of what they're talking about, is there are so many people out there searching for that power outside of themselves to build themselves up, put someone else down. I think the bullies of the world are the ones that are looking to find that power. They're looking to find that external fire to warm themselves up. So they pick on someone, and that's supposed to build up their power. Of course, it's not sustainable, and I believe certainly in the law of karma, and they're going to get theirs. And so I think the bully is a perfect example of someone trying to get their power from an inauthentic external source, whereas the kinder, gentler person it will be able to find that power within. And in that message, and I always love to give the examples of people that I find were very, very powerful people that exhibited that sensitive, kinder, gentler power. Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. I mean, there's a guy that's in prison for 26 years, comes out of prison and takes over a country and creates the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That's the kind of kinder, gentler power. And I know we're getting close to the end of the time, but I just want to make a plug for the fact that I think this is the rise of the feminine power. I think we have suppressed women and feminine energy too much. There is nothing like the power of a mother. And if we can bring that power out into the world and show the world that we can succeed in capitalism, we can succeed in business, we can succeed and make the world a much better place if we tap in to that kinder, gentler, feminine energy, which I think to a certain degree is a lot like the source energy.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like that is a much clearer path to healing than the perhaps more forceful and unrefined male energy, perhaps.
Right, and we've seen that come up in the politics in your country, in the United States, and it will be interesting to see if the incoming president, who has had some very difficult emotional traumas in his life, does lead with a kinder, gentler energy, and hopefully that may be the tipping point, and because we know that Shaltazar is saying 2021 is the year of great potential for change, and no change is not an option. So if you get anything out of today's episode, it's please go deep within and find your kinder, gentler power. I think you will find that you will accomplish more and you will feel a lot better if you can tap in to that authentic energy, that authentic power that you have.
Great advice. Well, we are out of time, so with that, we'll close this episode off. Thank you, Jeffrey. It was interesting and enlightening as always, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it, and love and light to all the listeners.
If you have any questions about the Master Teachings of Shaltazar, we invite you to submit them to Jeffrey at jeffreyeisen.com, and we will make your question the topic of a future episode.